Okay, so today's session, we are going to continue our discussion from last time where we have stopped. We are going to discuss 4 data structures, list, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. And we started looking at how lists in Python, they are, we can say, ordered collection of items, and we can use square brackets to represent a list. Once we create the list, we can add, we can remove, we can change. So therefore, we normally call this is a mutable data structure. Right, now here is the example we have discussed. In the example, we create a numbered list with the 5 items, and print in the list we can done in 2 ways. We can directly print the list, the whole list, or you can print each item at a time. Then we also get the length of the list. We can use a len function. And then we can discuss about accessing item using the index value. Python, we know the index start with 0. Then we discuss adding items to the list. We can have 2 methods. Append method can be used to add any item at the end of the list. And the insert can be used to specify where you want to insert an item. So you can specify the index and the value. Then we discuss the change of the values. We specify the item with the index, and then we can assign a different value. Then we discuss sorting the list using a sort method. We discuss both ascending and descending by changing reverse is set to true in case if you want descending ordered list. Then the removing can be done using the del method by specifying the index, or you can use remove method where you can specify the item. But please note that in case if you have multiple values with the same value, then it will remove the first instance. Right, here are the list of methods that we have discussed. And we did this example. Then we look at nested list, and then finally we end with matrices. Right. Okay, so let's start our discussion with the tuples. In this particular case, we are going to focus on again ordered collection of list. But this time, the ordered collection of list, we are going to work with, for example, in this case, that we cannot change once we create it. So it's an ordered collection of items. And for the representation, we are going to use what we call, sorry. Okay, so we wanted to use ordered collection of items, and then we normally use rounded bracket to represent this. But remember that once you create the tuple, you cannot change, you can remove, you can delete anything. So this is known as, you can say, read-only list, and that is what we call the immutable data type. Right. Okay, so let's do an exercise. I'm going to switch into yes, here. So the today session number 6. 6. Right. So the first thing we are going to discuss is how we can actually define tuples in here. So in this particular case, when we talk about a tuple, let's create a number tuple first, right? So let's create a number tuple. Right, now, when you say a number tuple, I'm going to say the number as number tuple. You can actually give any name you want. right? But make sure that you start with normal brackets. So the idea here is we specify normal brackets. So I will have a normal bracket which indicates a tuple, and then you can comma separate the values. So let's have some values. Okay, I'm going to put 11, 2, 23, and 45 and 15, a set of numbers. But once you create, as I told you earlier, you cannot change this. So which means you can print it. So let's print the tuple. So simply you can use print and name of the tuple, which will print the tuple. Right. Now that we create the tuple, the same way we can iterate over the tuple again using a for loop. So simply, if you want to print one item at the time, so for example, print each item in the tuple. So the best thing would be use a for loop, and with we can use an variable, and we can say, okay, we can iterate each value in the number tuple. So we can say, okay, for I in number tuple, and then simply we can say print I, which will go through each value within this tuple and it will display. So in this particular case, it will iterate through one item at a time for I in number tuple. And when we say print I, it will print one at a time, right? So this is iteratively when you want to print something. And remember that this will be the same for most of the data structures. We have seen the same code for list as well. Okay, next, getting a length. The command will be the same. We can use a len function and then we can say, okay, number tuple, which will display a number of items in the tuple. In this particular case, we have 5 items and we should get the number 5 here. Right. Now it says, okay, there are 5 items in the tuple. Similarly, if you want to access a particular item, let's say I want to access the first item. So accessing the first item in the tuple, we can simply say, okay, print number tuple. Within square bracket, we can specify the index. When we say the first item, we know index should start with 0. So in that particular case, when you run, you will get the first item, that is 11, right? So that's how we can access. Of course, deletion, you can do the whole, you can delete the whole, tuple. That can be done. But the best thing would be like you can del and the number tuple, which will remove everything. But you cannot, delete individual items. Right. Let's move on to the note. So as you can see, we discuss the example, what methods are possible with the tuples. What you need to remember is once you create, you cannot change whatever inside the tuple. So it is best that sometimes when you want to, store values which you don't, once you create, if you don't want to change, then define those values as tuples, which will make sure that they won't change during the program execution. Of course, getting help is similar to earlier. Just type help and tuple, which will give you, more information about the tuples in Python. Right. Okay, so let's move to the next data structure. Okay, so the next data structure that we are going to discuss is called dictionaries. Again, dictionaries are quite useful in Python because this representation is very important. And dictionary, it's the same as a list which holds the item. But when we are calling the item, we don't use any numbers like in list. So in list, usually we have numbers like 0, 1, 2. Instead of that, we have something called a key. Because of this reason, usually in dictionaries, we have key value pairs, right? Always we have key and value pairs, which you can use key to extract the value, right? Now, let me create a dictionary and show you an example how dictionary works. So when you want to create a dictionary, so let's create a dictionary, First thing that you to remember is you are going to specify key value pairs. So the dictionary we will start to say, let's say I'm going to store some numbers as a dictionary. So usually now we are using curly bracket. Since we have key value pairs, let me separate out so that it will be cleared for us. So the first thing is you have to have a key. So let me put some a key value. So I put it as 1. So for example, in list, we have numbers, right? Index 0. So likewise, here we specify key. Then you have a value. So this is like a key value pair. Let me say that, okay, I'm going to, convert numbers in English into numbers in, let's say, Japanese. So under the key 1, I'm going to store a Japanese name for 1, which is Ichi. So that is the first key value pair. Then let me take the second one. I'm going to say 2. I will say ni. And let's have the third one, 3. So in here we have san, right? So this is how we will create. So it doesn't have to be, it could be anything, but what you need to remember is you specify key and value pairs, right? So your left-hand side, you have keys, and your right-hand side, you have value. So you have key value pairs. And let's print this once we create. So let me print number dictionary. So let's see the outcome. So now you can see it's simply a curly bracket with a list of key value pairs. With the 1, you have Ichi, 2 with ni, 3 with san, and so on. Right? So this is how we can actually, get the whole dictionary. Now, if you ask me whether you can use the for loop like in early, of course you can use, but there's slight difference. Now, if you use the traditional way of, for loop. Okay, before I move to that, can you raise your hand if you have finished up to this point? Right? What if I use a for loop like in early? So see what will happen for I in number dictionary, and let's say print I, which is pretty much same what we have seen early, and this is the outcome. So what you see here is you can figure out that this will display only the keys. So this will give you keys in the dictionary. Right? So this will print keys in the dictionary. So simply we get 1, 2, 3, but they are keys. Remember, we said we have key value pairs. So in other words, let's say if you want to need the values, then you have to slightly change this code, right? So let me discuss that one as well. So let's say I want to print, let's say, values. So the command is, we can say for I in, we can say, okay, number dictionary, and then we say values. So in this one, we can specify only the values. So now, earlier we got only the keys, but this time you will see we are getting only the values part of it. Okay, now if you ask me like whether there is a way that we can show you both, answer is yes. So in this particular case, we are going to, if you want to print both keys and values, right, as items, right? So we can use number, dict, and item like in values here. So if you want to print everything like print items, so the code that you can use for I in number dict dot, you can say items. So what happens here now, it shows you both key value pairs. So this time when you say print I, and if you run it, now you can observe that, right? This will print as a tuples, both keys and value pairs. So one ichi, two ni, three san, which means basically it'll print both key and value pairs. Okay, just to summarize what we have done so far, we create a dictionary. What we need to remember is we will specify both keys and value pairs. And then simply we can use a print statement with a for loop just to get the keys. If you need values, you can use dictionary name dot values. But of course, if you need like both key and value pairs, which we call items, then you can use number dict dot items. Right. Now let's look at the other things. Now, for example, if you need the length or how many items in the list, we can use the same len command we have discussed. So the command is, we can say, okay, length of the dictionary. So in this case, we can say print len, and we can say number dictionary. So of course, it should tell us that, okay, there are three, right? Three items in the dictionary. Okay, now let's look at how we can access each individual elements. For example, let's say we want to access the first value, right? So in that particular case, let's say accessing key, let's say the first one. In this particular case, we can say, okay, print, we can say number dictionary. And, earlier we used to say 0, 1 if it is index based. And I told you this is key based. So the keys, the possible keys are, you can see actually the list out here. 1, 2, or 3. So let me use 1. So now what happens, it gives you the value which stores under the first key, that means key 1, that is ichi. So the other way to get the same one is you can use get method like this. So we can say print, okay, so number dictionary dot get, okay, we can use as 1. So this is another way to, get the same value, which should tell us that the matching value for 1, the key 1 is should be ichi. Right. The next one is, let's discuss how we can adding a new item. So right now, when I print it, let me print number dictionary, and we have 3 items. The keys are 1, 2, 3. So which means when you want to add, let's say, the 4th element, the trick that we are going to use is simply we will say, okay, number dict, right? And then we will say, okay, 4. So what is the value for this? So let's say it's yawn. In this particular case, when you run, and then if you print the number dictionary again, you can see that there are 4 items, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have added the 4th element, right? So this is how you can add new elements to a dictionary. We have to specify both what we call the key and a value pair. So we said it's in this particular case, we use it as the key as 4, the value as yawn. Okay, right. Now that we have discussed how to add a new item, let's look at how to change an item, right? Now, in Japanese, for example, for number 4, there are 2, presentation. Right now we have used yon. So there's another representation as she. So let me change. So let me type first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually change the value for key 4 as she. So key 4 is the one that we want to change. So through accessing that one will be number dictionary, and then we say 4, which will give you access. What is there? It's yon right now. Okay, we want to update it as she. So we can say she, right? And this is how it is. You have changed that. And let's print it. So print number dictionary. And if you run it, now this time you can notice the 4th element. Now we have changed the value as she. Okay, last method to discuss. How do you remove items? Right now we have 4 items, isn't it? Here we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say we want to remove the second one. The command is similar to the previous one. You can use del, and then we can say number dictionary, and then you have to specify the key. So let's remove the second one, key number 2. Yes, we removed. Again, let's print the dictionary. Okay, we can say print number dictionary. Yes, and just compare the last values. Earlier we have 4 items. Now when we use number dictionary, since we have removed 1, we should be getting 3 items, isn't it? So you can see now we have 1 ichi, 3 sun, and 4 she. The 2 we have removed from this. Okay. If you are finished, please raise your hand. So let's see what we have discussed so far. So the dictionary, we discuss items like a list, but instead of index, the numerical index, we are using keys. So what we had is key value pairs. We take an example with English to Japanese, but the idea is we specify key values here. So when you want to print separately using for loops, uh, the usual way we will get only the keys. But then when you want to get values, you have to use dot values. When you want to get items, you have to say dot items and so on. And then we discuss about how to get a length. And based on the key, we can access the elements. Then we discuss adding and changing elements. And finally, the removing items. So here is the list of methods available in the dictionary. This is not the whole list. But remember, always you can type help dictionary to get the detailed help where you can see all the possible methods available under the dictionary, right? But I think we basically discussed the main ideas, which is what we want to discuss. Right. Okay. So the next thing that I would like to discuss about the sets. Now, to discuss the sets in Python, we can talk about you know different sets. When we want to discuss the sets, basically it's unique. We can talk about right. The sets we will have unordered collection. Let me start. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss under this is sets in Python. So the sets, if you it's very similar to mathematical notation of sets as well. And what you need to remember about the sets is they are unordered collection of what we call unique items. And here also we are using curly brackets. And then since there's no order, there's no index as well. You cannot change the items, but you can add new items. So those are the things we need to remember. Right, so let's start. So let's create a number list first. So we will have number, let's say set. Remember, we have to use curly brackets. And then we can specify set of numbers. So let me use the same set of numbers like in earlier. Right. Now, this is a set. And simply when you print it will be same as early. So when you say print number set, it will send you as a list. But remember that there's no order. The order we have specified here and the order we will get is different. The reason is there's no specific order within the set. So you cannot assume that what might happen because we are not going to focus on index value. But you can use for loop like in early. For example, the same method we can say for I in number set. We can say print I, which will print whatever the numbers within the set, right? Again, remember there's no specific order that we are going to discuss. Then next, getting a length of the set, we can use print length number set, which will print the number sets here. Here we have 5 sets, right? That means 5 numbers in the set. Right. The next one, adding items. Okay, adding an item, simply what we could do, we can use add method. So for example, when you say number set, let's add a number. Let me put 6 and let's print the number set. So you can see now the number 6 added. Earlier we had 5 items. Now once you add the item number 6, we have 6 items. Again, the where this is insert, there's no control over it. It's automated, and you know it's there, right? Let's say you add the 6 again, and if you run the number set again, please note that this will be a unique set of items. So when there are duplicate values, you are going to keep only the unique values. So no change. Right. Now that's about the adding an items. Next, let's talk about how to remove an item. So the remove is we can use, there are 2 methods actually, right? So for example, if you say, okay, number set dot remove 2, right? And let's print number set. So if you do that, you will see it will remove the items. In this particular case, it will remove 2. And then it will show you the remaining items. Right? So it will remove 2 and the remaining. But what about if I rerun this? Then again, it's try to remove 2. So let me rerun. This time, it will give you an error saying that it is not there. So remember that. The method remove can be used, but remember it will produce an error if that particular value is not there. So in here, I am actually trying to remove 2 twice. Second time, we are getting an error. Right. So what you could do for this is to avoid getting an error. So we can, instead of remove, we can use discard. So it does the same thing, discard, but remember, it won't generate any error if the value is not there. So for example, discard 2, there was no 2 in earlier, but then again, you get an outcome without any error. Okay, so those are the things that I would like to discuss under the data structures. Just to summarize, we discussed 4 data structures: the lists, tuples, the dictionaries, and then finally sets. Right. Okay. The next part that I would like to discuss is related to the list again. And we can see the next one we are going to have a small discussion on the strings. Now, string is a special case. We know the string consists of sequence of characters, and you can using a single quotation mark or double quotation mark. And the second one is, once you represent the string as a, let's say, an array or a list, we can now use an index. So using index, you know that you can, select some of the characters, right? But remember that strings are immutable. That means you cannot change the content once you actually create, right? So let's start with the basics first. Now let's take this example. So we have a string called dialog, right? We have a string S, we call a dialog. Now when we use a with an example like dialog, with the index, we know the first character index is 0, second character is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So since you go from this direction, we normally call this is forward indexing, right? So there's a backward indexing as well. For example, the last element or G, we can represent using -1 or then -2. So likewise, we can identify forward indexing as well as backward indexing. Okay, small exercise. Let's check the first one. It is S note. So we said the string is dialog. So what is S note? So we know that the S note is, we can say that a string is a sequence of characters. So we can pick the first letter, that is capital D, right? Same way. Now this is forward indexing, we said, because the 0 will represent the D forward index in this side. But when you backward indexing, when you say S -6, it will reference the same D, right? So if you look at, for example, if you say print S -6, it will be the same, right? We are getting the same answer. Okay, can you check the other answers as well? And can you share in the chat your answers? Right, let's continue our discussion. So as you can see, the both S naught and S minus 6 will give you the same answer, which is the first letter, whereas S5 and S minus 1 will give you the last letter, right? So whenever you want to refer something in the back or the last element, then it's best that you use backward indexing. If you want to access something from the beginning, then we can use forward indexing. Now let's look at slicing strings. Actually, this part will similar to, for example, even in list as well. But let's try to understand with slicing using the string S. So I use the term dialog here. And then usually slice can start with 3 values: start, stop, and step, right? So we can use index values to decide the start and end value. Now, for example, let's start with the first one. Now it says you have 2 values. When you have 2 values, you specify start and stop. So when we say start and stop, you start with 0, goes up to 4, right? Stop 4 means up to 4. That means 0, 1, 2, 3. First 4 letters. So let me show you the answer. So if you take this, let me take the code and let's say print S 0 to 4, which you will get the dial, first 4 characters. Now, since you start S with 0, you don't have to specify. So the best would be like you can simply say, okay, S colon 4, which indicates that, okay, I'm going to get the first 4 letters. So if you remember this, now this is easy. So for example, let's say I need the first 2 letters, you just put 2 here, isn't it? So we can say print S, okay, we can say colon 2, which indicates that we are getting the first 2 letters. Similarly, let's look at the second item. Okay, first of all, you can try this and then I will explain. Take some time, try to understand all these together with the string, and then we'll discuss. More important ones. Right, now, couple of things that I want to highlight. First one, when we want to access, first set of elements. So for example, here, this could be the representation to access the first 4 elements. Then, if you want to access something after this, then we can use 3 and colon. The third item we are going to discuss specifying all the element from starting to the end. So when I say to the end, the last item we can get by using the length if you want, or simply you can say S colon. Again, very important. Right. Fourth one, when we have starting value 3 and 6, that means the start is 3, 4, 5, right? And with the step of 2, so for example, we can have 3, then you can have 5. That's all. So this is how we can actually shorten for. The next one is when we have start, stop, and step. One is default one. So simply we can use the same method and simply you can have two columns. That is also possible. Next, okay, very interesting one, this. So you go from -1. When I say -1, just look at this, the last item. So if this is -1, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. So you say -1 to -7 with the step of -1. Right. So in this particular case, we have -1 to -7 with the step of -1. So you can see how it'll flip the string, and which will be the same for last one as well, right? So let me take our this. So for example, here, when we say, right, S -1 to -7 with a step of -1. So you can actually flip the string. So we can get the dialogue. But if you go character by character in other way around. So simply, since we have a start and end, if you just ignore the starting and ending. So that means colon, -1, which gives you just the same outcome. You don't have to specify start and end, but you simply say the step is -1, which will, flip the value of the string. Right, okay. The next one, so the last slide that I would like to discuss for today's session, that means how to print separately. In this particular case, we are going to print individual characters at a time. So we can say simply, if you have a string S dialog, and if you say len S, we have 6 characters. You have I in range 6. Yes, 0 to 5, right? So you can print that. The second one is same thing, but instead of that, we can use character by character. So the shortest form of this is you specify for value, and then we have character in S, and then you print the character. Right. So with that discussion, we can actually finish for what we have discussed for today. And then I will share like some assignment. This particular case, we have came up to the data structures part. So I think we better, practice what we have learned so far. So in the next session, session number 7, we are going to actually focus on numerical Python, which is again Python library that we can actually use for numerical computation. So that's what we are going to discuss next week. Okay, next, I think we should now start the Kahoot quiz to for the time being.